want to thank everybody for coming to this wonderful event that we have here. My name is Jay Hamilton. I'm the head of the Department of Entertainment and Media Studies, but I'm also the faculty advisor of the Grady College Culture Club, which seeks to encourage and help students and faculty get together and talk about a variety of different approaches. We're very pleased to use all of our friggin' budget this year to bring back to campus Dr. Felicia Harris. I want to say just a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it right over to her. Dr. Harris is an associate professor of communication studies and media at the University of Houston downtown. She, of course, did her PhD and MA here at University of Georgia. Her doctoral coursework explored how members of marginalized groups create online communities to thrive in spite of dominant structures that impact every aspect of their lives, including their health and well-being. She teaches all kinds of great courses. I'm going to let her talk about that, plus about the topic she's going to talk about today. So I'm going to be quiet and just bring her on. Felicia, welcome.
This is so nice. Oh, that's very nice. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm super, super excited to be here. I thought I would be more nervous than I am, but there's been such a warm reception and all the VIPs coming from retirement. So that has me really excited. Let's see if I can bring this back. Oh, it goes to sleep. It's one of those.
It'll come back, I promise.
Okay. I'm prepared to do it without it if I have to. So I was talking to Dr. Hamilton, and we had a phone conversation with him, extended the invitation of what I could talk about. And, they always say, oh, just send the title. And I think that's the hardest thing as an academic is like, the title, I could send you 6 pages before I send you a title. Because once I send you the title, I'm locked in, right? And so I said, okay, let's talk about scholactivism, the surprising path of scholactivism, personal, professional, and political implications of critical cultural work. So before we get started, I just want to make sure we have a shared sense of language, very basic understanding of what a scholar is. It's what all of us are in the room, right? Specialist in academic discipline, an activist, a person who campaigns to bring about political or social change. We all know you don't have to be a scholar to be an activist. You don't have to be an activist to be a scholar. And then I also included public intellectual here because I think we often know people, scholars that we know, they're public intellectuals, but that doesn't make them activists either. They're just kind of widely well known outside of academia for doing the work that they do. Doesn't mean that they're doing it in a way to bring about political or social change. So now that we have this kind of shared, since scholactivist is just a word that we scholars made up, which we tend to do all the time, where we take scholar, we take activist, we put it together, and the idea behind it is that we as people who can create knowledge really have this innate understanding that what we're creating can actually change the lives, change lived conditions of people. So then we become intentional and purposeful about making sure that the work that we do, that the knowledge that we create can really kind of work toward social impact and some actual goals. And so now that we have that, I just want to say I'm so happy to be here. That is really, really good to be back. I was telling the doctoral students that I had the honor of meeting with for lunch, I never thought I was coming back to UGA. When I took this picture, when I was leaving, I didn't think I would get an invite to come back because of the way that my path went, which is so different from what most PhD students who come from this top communication program go off to do. I mean, I saw my friends like Dr. Coleman come back. She's at Howard. Last year, you all had Jess Maddox, who is a good friend of mine who came out after me. She's at the University of Alabama. We're still in touch. I will say that if you think I'm anything like Dr. Maddox, just bring your expectations down, because she is really just so brilliant, and she has had such a track record when it comes to publications and the work that she's doing in the internet space at the University of Alabama. But I took a different path. And I'm very proud of my path, and I can also tell you that it started here at UGA. I think most people who consider themselves scholars or activists, and my mom is here in the crowd, she'll probably tell you, you always had a little bit of scholar in you, always had a little bit of activist in you. But I will say that my time here at UGA was when it really all came together for me. And I think it's when it kind of activated and I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. So in a couple slides, we'll talk about some kind of current day realities that I'm up against and that I'm navigating. But I wanted to share a little bit about how this scholar activist journey got activated here at UGA. So I came here with my son. At the time, he was 2. He's now 15. He's in the back, and I was going to be a journalist. That was the goal. New York was on my mind. I had just got a business license for a hyperlocal media, magazine called Unseen Urban Magazine. So you can probably tell by the name, I didn't have the language, but there was a little scholar in there that knew hyperlocal was the thing, minority press was the thing, and that's what button do I press? Oh. Okay, shift. Oh, here we go. So there was a part of me that kind of knew that there were things that I was working on. I just didn't have the language. That was the goal. And then I took my first pro-seminar class with Dr. Ellie Roshan-Zamir, who could not be here. And long story short, somehow I ended up in her office on the couch crying, talking about mass media stereotypes. I was a teen mom. I don't really know how we got there. But I will say, from all of her advisees, we tend to have kind of like the same origin story. I don't know, Jess and Lauren, we all talk about how these courses that we took when we got here just really were so eye-opening in ways that we could have never imagined when we set out to just come learn how to tell good stories. Like, I just wanted to be a reporter, and now here I am getting my edges snatched and learning about theories of communication and all this stuff. So I switched to mass media studies, but I still wanted to be a journalist. I've always wanted to be a writer. So all of my journalism courses I took with Pat Thomas, who's here, in the health and medical journalism program. That was really important too, because at the same time I was learning all this stuff about communication theory and how meaning is created through communication, meaning that really impacts our everyday lived experiences. I was telling stories about folks who were impacted by health disparities, Black women, folks here in the Athens community who are living in impoverished conditions, and how, something about the news stories we were writing and the education that people were getting were impacting their health outcomes, and it wasn't quite, I needed to know more. So that's how I ended up getting the PhD. I was like, I'm telling the stories that matter. I'm a health reporter, and I am deeply moved. I am deeply moved. So it wasn't enough to just write about health disparities. I want to know, how do we get to a point where health disparities exist in this society? And how do we get to a point where everyone is okay with it, or it seems like everyone is okay with it, and it's just kind of accepted that, hey, Black woman, white woman, same everything. This woman is going to deal with a whole lot more. We don't know what's going on. And so that's kind of where I continued on with getting my PhD, and I took some classes over in the College of Public Health. I feel like I have to speed up my talk now so it won't go to sleep. So anyway, this is how I got to my PhD, mass communication, graduated in 2015. Me and my son, we're living the dream now. And I was like, I probably won't ever come back because my path looks a little different. So as many of you, if you're in the PhD program, know, when you have to start thinking of what's your next step after PhD, it's a crisis like none other. Because before, we always had more degrees to get. I just always go back to school at some point. This was it. So, I kind of was like, okay, teaching institution, I really love making an impact, direct impact on students' lives. You can go to a teaching institution, teach 4 or 5 classes a semester, or you can go to an R1 institution. I could be really, really knee-deep in the work that I care about and just spend a lot of time on that and actually still have some, student interactions. But I found this little gem called a comprehensive institution, which is an institution that allows you to teach and research and distributes the workload a little bit differently. So my workload at the University of Houston downtown is 50% teaching, 25% research, and 25% service. In addition to UHD being a comprehensive institution, one of the realities that I was up against, and I talked with the doctoral students about this as well, was that although I love Athens, man, I love Athens. It's so beautiful. And I loved my time here. I was pretty sure I did not want to go to an R1. I was pretty sure that I did not want to be in a college town that lacked the diversity that I craved. I was pretty sure that I wanted to go to a place where people looked like me and thought like me or had some experiences that were similar to mine. I had to also think about what kind of quality of life I would have as a Black woman in the academy, where I would raise my son. So I was really looking at urban metro institutions, and that's how I landed on Houston, the most diverse city in the United States. I think I'll move over here to this side so I can tell you a little bit about UHD. So for following Carnegie, master's colleges and universities is a larger program. So we don't have PhD students. We have master's and undergraduate programs. It is a federally designated minority-serving and Hispanic-serving institution. This was key for me when I got there. I will never forget my on-campus visit. I was looking for a bathroom, and I ran into a student who was pushing her stroller. And I just she was like, hey, you can go this way. I mean, it wasn't a thing. It was so normal that it brought me to tears, because I remember being a student parent, and it was the opposite of normal, right? Coming in campus with my child was always a show. It was always a thing. And so being at an institution where we had primarily non-traditional students was just amazing to me. Our average student age is 27 years old. And this is for students who are not getting a PhD. So this is average of 27 years old when they're getting undergraduate and master's degree. I've taught students ranging in ages from 16 all the way up to 65, I want to say, in an entry-level public speaking class. It's incredible. So I met the students. It's an urban commuter campus, meaning there's not a res life. People don't live on campus. Everyone is traveling to be there. The teaching load is 4-3. That means that I teach 4 classes in the fall, 3 classes in the spring on average. That's what we get, unless you get someone to buy out, which we'll get to that later. And the average class size is 20 students. So when I found UHD, I was like, I am living the dream. This is gonna be it. It's 2015. I'm going to Houston, H-Town, home of Beyonce. I'm teaching students who look like me, who have similar experiences. I'm really gonna be able to make a difference. And so you probably can already hear the underpinnings of my schoolactivism coming out. But then we had these kind of competing realities. So I say that because, when you're in your doctoral program, dreaming of the future and all this money you'll make as a professor on the tenure track, right? Because it's a lot of money, apparently. You kind of have this dichotomy between maybe the kids say it these days, on Instagram versus real life, if that kind of rings a bell, or how it started, how it's going. We have those kind of things as well. So I want to take a minute to kind of reflect on how it started, and then we'll get to kind of how it's going. So like Dr. Hamilton said, I was on fire about my research. I had an agenda. It was going to take off. Even though you can look and already see it's already irrelevant. I was on the job market branding myself as doing hashtag studies, okay? It was 2015. Bear with me. The hashtag was a thing at the time. I did my whole dissertation on hashtags. It was hashtag intervention, and we were talking about imagined communities, the sense of belonging when we're able to connect in these online spaces, identity and resistance in online platforms, and how people were able to use hashtags to simultaneously connect with people while also sharing a message about themselves. There was also this level of participatory and alternative media, folks using media in alternative ways and collaborating with each other. I used the circuit of culture, which is this Stuart Hall framework where we're talking about media consumption, production, regulation, identity, and I'm always missing the last one. But I always get 4 out of 5. So I was on fire. I mean, I was coming out at a time where folks were really just starting to think about Black Twitter, where we were really looking at kind of these alternative uses of social media for connecting and activism and organizing. And there was so much potential there. And I mean, I was going to H-Town. I was going to get down with it. So before we get into some other stuff, I want to take a moment here to hold space for some kind of the personal how it's going, how it started, things that shaped me. And if you look at this screen, you probably are already recognizing some of these names. These are the names of Black people that we lost to police brutality throughout my PhD academic journey. So 2012, after February 2012 is when I was deciding to get my PhD. It's right around the time I was accepted, so we had just lost Trayvon Martin. If you're familiar with, that's around the time also where we were getting Black Lives Matter and all of these things were just starting to take off. Then in between Tamir Rice and Walter Scott, that's when I was writing my dissertation and defending my dissertation in February 2015, which feels like so long ago. Well, I mean, I was so excited because I'm looking at how Black people are using social media online to write their own narratives about health, and we're being healthy and we're connecting, and people are still getting killed, but okay, we're learning how Black people are using the internet and things are happening. July 2015 is when I was packing to move to my tenure-track position in Houston. Sandra Bland was found dead in police custody, right? And she was arrested right outside of Houston city limits. So I was dealing with that. Literally, I was driving a U-Haul from Athens all the way to Houston in August 1st, 2015. And we were fresh on this. Still excited, still optimistic, because I'm living the dream. Tenure track, okay? So there was a lot that happened in 2016. We'll get there. We're still losing folks. Between Tatiana Jefferson and Breonna Taylor is the moment when I was first asked to step into my first service role as assistant director of the Center for Critical Race Studies at UHD. As you can imagine, these things are working together. And then May 2020, not only do we have this global pandemic, we have the public execution of Native Houstonian George Floyd. So you can only imagine what that felt like in Houston, Texas, as I was preparing my dossier for tenure. Okay, I went up for tenure in October 2020. So that's kind of personally how it started, how it's going. And then these are some of the political and professional moments, hallmarks that have also shaped my journey since leaving UGA, right? So excited to get to my Hispanic serving institution. If you saw that statistic, over 55% of my students are Hispanic or Latinx. And right there in 2016, man, we had bad hombres. I mean, it's second semester. So there's a lot of things that are going on in Houston. If you know anything about the racial and demographic makeup, there's a lot of concerns, questions, talks. Students in my intro to mass media course are like, can we talk about bad hombres for a second? Can we talk about what's happening on CNN? And I'm like, okay, yeah, we gotta go there. There's no way we cannot go there, right? So this is kind of one of those examples of things being how it started, how it's going. Things started to change. Donald Trump was elected. We had national protest. 2017 is not on here, but we had Hurricane Harvey, all kind of different things happened with my family makeup and all kind of stuff. 2018, once again, we get another soundbite with shithole countries. Again, Houston is also a melting pot. It's an international city. So you think about any country that might have fallen in this category of shithole countries. That's where my students are from. That's where my neighbors are from. So things are happening. We have to engage in these kind of conversations, especially when I'm teaching mass communication, race, ethnicity, and communication. There's kind of no way to get around this stuff. More protest. By 2020, I'm barely holding on, right? By 2020, I'm barely holding on. I'm teaching, I'm progressing, and I just got recently asked to step into a role as a service role as assistant director of the Center for Critical Race Studies. We get a global pandemic, we get George Floyd's public execution, we get national racial uprisings, we get a woman for vice president. I mean, there's a lot. It's just rich here in 2020. And then, here we go. I'm getting better. Is it working? Oh, I'll have to stay on this side. Okay. Oh, wait, don't go there yet. Okay, so there's 2020, and then in 2022, we have Roe versus Wade. I kind of melded 2020 to 2022 together because there was a lot. This CRT ban, this anti-DEI stuff really started taking shape in 2020. That's when we started to really, toward the end of 2020, experience what we call the pendulum swing, where in early 2020 or mid 2020, we have George Floyd, we have these uprisings, we have Twitter, we have all of this kind of activism, community education going on, and people are like, we want to be woke. Teach me, tell me, help me. I've never worked so hard in my life like I did in June of July 2020, just really trying to bring everyone up to an awareness of what is really going on in the world today. And then we had this pendulum swing, especially in Texas, where people are like, oh, you want to educate people? Absolutely not, right? So then we see this very real political intervention into what we can and cannot say, what we can and cannot teach, what we can and cannot do. I, as a center director and as a faculty member who teaches kind of even just critical adjacent things or things related to race and ethnicity, I was having meetings with system counsel. This was an honest, like, I have to meet with a lawyer type thing, and you're like, oh, I just kind of want to teach. Like, I just kind of want to do what I thought I was going to do when I was at UGA all those years ago. And so you kind of see this galactivist evolution that begins to take place in my career. And so I always like to give that kind of context because things have just gone way differently than I thought they would, right? Of course, there was always probably a little bit of scholar in me, a little bit of activist in me, but it really kind of amplified because of those personal and political timelines. I just made a joke at a meeting. We just got a $500,000 Mellon grant at my department to start a program of Black Studies. And it's so interesting because the news was coming out right as Governor DeSantis decided that African American studies has no inherent educational value. And I was like, man, I am now planning my career in political elections. Like I'm like, how long until we figure out, is this going to be able to be taught or not? Will it be funded or not? This is something I would have never, ever imagined. So you kind of see this political evolution. This is literally like my CV. You don't have to read everything. I've highlighted the relevant parts for you. So in the red, you can kind of see where I'm sticking to my brand as a hashtag studies scholar, right? Doing my health thing, doing social media. This is 2015, 2016. I'm cranking it out. I'm getting it done. I'm going up for 10 years. By 2017, I'm still hashtagging in health. I'm looking at health in online spaces. You see that one blip of yellow where someone was like, hey, let's do a panel at AEJ where we say, why do we always have to talk about race? Okay, I'm down with that. Cool. We've been talking about bad hombres and all kind of stuff, right? So, okay, but we're doing it. I'm sticking to the plan. 2018 and 2020, if you can just hold those timelines in your mind, right? Things are ramping up a little bit. You see another little blip of yellow, radical self-care practices as resistance for Black women in the academy. Now it's starting to kind of like bud up a little bit, and then we're here. So 2021 to the present, I have not done social media or hashtag related work per se that has been published, right, in the past couple of years because I was pulled kind of into a different space. And you can really see this galactivist evolution where now I'm talking critical pedagogy in higher education, talking teaching race and ethnicity in the intercultural and intergenerational classroom. I'm doing a real in the community art house exhibition, material exhibition, which is something that I did, an installation at this world-renowned community social experiment called Project Row Houses in Houston, Texas. It's phenomenal. And they invited us to come and do a house as a part of their Round 53, The Curious Case of Critical Race Theory, which was designed to engage and educate the public because I don't know how much that conversation has boiled over here in Georgia. I imagine some. But in Texas, it's boiling hot. And so to the extent where the community is now like, we don't know what's been going on in that ivory tower, but we want to know what's going on. Something that y'all been doing over there, we need to know how it impacts us over here. We need to know how this impacts our everyday life. And so I was honored to be able to be asked to come do this house that really visually brought much of my research and much of the work we do to life. And it was such a challenge, but it was like, this is so invigorating, right? Like this is something, again, leaving UGA, not on my 5-year plan to like become a pseudo artist where I am sourcing materials and working with the graphic designer to build an art installation. Didn't see that one coming, but this is where we are. This is where we are. So what came out of me was really this transition from saying like, what do I want to teach and what do I want to research, which is a real luxury that you have in graduate school. It's just like, what a time, what a time. What do I want to teach and what do I want to research, and just to sit with that and think about that. But if you hold those personal timelines, if you think about those political and those professional timelines, it became, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Became the most urgent and pressing question. I would love to just be doing health research. I would really love that. I tell this to my students and my colleagues all the time because they don't seem to believe me. You know, I didn't go to school for DEI work. I actually didn't want to be a DEI person. I'm trying to like go the opposite way. I would just like to be a person who does research on hashtags, even though they're now irrelevant. I'll deal with that later. Whatever our mechanisms are, you know, tags, hyperlinking, whatever we're calling it these days. I was really, really excited about that. I was really, really excited about just being a media scholar. But because I am also a Black woman, because I am also a first-generation college graduate, because I am also a single mom, and because of the population that I serve, and because of the place that I live, and because of the time that we're in, it didn't quite go that way, right? We get pulled in these kind of different directions. So here's the slide that brings it all together. I was telling them, I was getting ready last night, and I was like, I have to put something in here about theory or something, I think, or they'll never invite me again. I think I gotta like drop like a name or two because, you know, it's really hard now. Like I kept pressing Dr. Hamilton and saying, can you please send me your reading list? Like I would love to know what the students are doing. But the reality, I was like, I need to refamiliarize myself, because the further you get into this work, the less time I will say that you're spending in the literature, the less time that you're like, oh, let me see what Foucault would think, right? But something that has really comforted me is something that my advisor, Dr. Rashan Zamir, told me when I first got here, probably one of those times when I was crying in her hallway on the couch, because I was like, I don't get theory. I do not understand theory. It is not making sense. I don't know what's happening. I'm so confused. And she was like, you do get theory. You have a worldview, you just don't have the language. The theory is already in you. We don't have to worry about that. It's already there. You just don't have the language, and that was our hurdle, was like getting what was in here and what I was thinking and feeling in my worldview to align with what I was seeing in all those Belgian packets, right? So now I can tell you that even though I'm not actively reading and up to my knees and all of this stuff, this is kind of the theoretical underpinnings of my schoolactivism. If you just wanted a reading list, like if you're like, oh, I want to walk away from this and think about what informs the work. We have a lot of Black feminist thought, obviously. I'm a Black woman, and I really embrace this idea that Black women thrive in community and must work to resist interlocking forms of oppression. We just have to do it, not because we signed up to be a DEI scholar, but because it is necessary for our survival. Like, I'm fighting literally for my life. You try to tell my colleagues, like, you're doing this work, I appreciate you, I'm glad you're here. You think I'm doing this work because I wanted to do it? No, it's because if I wasn't doing it, I probably wouldn't even be here. I'm doing this work for my life. But I also think about it in terms of Black women deserve love, we deserve joy, we deserve safety, we deserve protection, we deserve rest, right? And so these are the kind of things that govern my decisions, like not going to R1, even though I love you all here. Thinking of like questions like, who's gonna do my hair, right? Who's going to do my nails? Where am I going to shop, right? These are real questions that drove my decisions, because I can't be my best self as a scholar if like I can't have my hair done. I know it may sound trivial, but it's very serious, right? It's a serious situation. Also, critical race theory. This idea that racism and other forms of inequality are structural and systemic. And critical race theory, I'm sure you'll learn a whole bunch of other theories that are related when we talk about systems and structures. But this really drives me, just having this idea that things are systemic in structure. Structural. So it's built into the fabric. I'm not going after individuals. I'm not worried about Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick. They are symptoms of the structure. They are not the structure. So it doesn't, I don't waste too much energy on those type of things, if that makes sense. And if you don't know, Greg Abbott is the governor of Texas. Dan Patrick is the lieutenant governor who is, as of last year, threatening my tenure. And then communication as culture, if we get into kind of where I stand as a communication practitioner and scholar, this idea that meanings are shared and made active through communication, which is the process of community, of sharing common meanings, activities, and purposes. I 100% still believe that, and it shows up in the work that I do. And then media as practice. So this question of how is people's media-related practice related in turn to their wider agency? And so those bottom two, of course, really relate to the work that I was doing for Black women in online spaces and all of that. But now we think about it in terms of community organizers, protesters, people who are using social media in alternative ways for shared goals or common goals, things of that nature. So these kind of are like, they're always with me. It's like my little knapsack. If I go to do these different things, if I'm invited to meet with a community organization, when I'm working with my colleagues at work, it's just me and bell hooks. We're just over here thinking about things all the time. So that's how I see it. And I'll give you some examples of what being a schoolactivist looks like for me, or some schoolactivist roles. So one, and this is why I included the definition earlier, is of course public intellectual. A public intellectual does not have to be a schoolactivist, but a lot of schoolactivists are public intellectuals because we understand this need to be impactful outside of academia. So that looks like, writing your op-eds for the New York Times or for the Houston Chronicle, posting on social media, having a following. I did not want to use the word influencer because I think my, public intellectual colleagues I'm not just an influencer, but they're influencers of thought, right? Those kind of ways that you see people showing up and using the knowledge that they create to really help engage the public on how they can impact social change. And then my favorite, administrative and service roles. And that was a joke. I don't know if everybody got it. That was a joke. So my favorite is through administrative and service roles. And again, for me, this worked a number of ways. I'm at a teaching institution. It started off really innocently because I teach 4-3, which is a really heavy load. The only way to get out of teaching is to do more service. So it was a very practical move for me to become the assistant director of the Center for Critical Race Studies because I got what is called a course release. So, they reassign your time and allow you to work on other things that you're passionate about or more aligned with your scholarly expertise. And then someone can come teach one of your classes. So it helped reduce the teaching load so I can kind of work in these other spaces. The plan was always to use it to fuel more research, but we haven't gotten to that point yet, kind of. And so I started off very simply as assistant director of the Center for Critical Race Studies, where we literally work as a sounding board for my institution. We meet with upper administration, we meet with faculty senator to give them this critical perspective on things that really impact the structure of the university significantly. So before this year, the past 2 years, one of the things I was working on, for example, so diligently in the summer of 2020 was a memo for our provost on new DEI policies and procedures for the university. Although those things are now defunct as of 2 weeks ago, we did make a lot of progress because we were able to do things like get institutional membership to support faculty of color and retain them, to create a writing group for women of color faculty members, to allocate those fundings to truly show up and support the communities that we say that we serve. Different initiatives such as there's a Men of Legacy program at our institution designed to support Black and brown boys who come through in order to retain them because they struggle the most at our institution. And I also work with an organization called Latinas Achieve, which is to support Hispanic and Latino women in their professional empowerment and how to address the pay gap and these kind of really real things that are impacting them today. I was also a faculty senator a teaching fellow, right? So I took that on also for a course release, but it was a lot of fun because I was able to advocate for more critical pedagogy in the classroom. And one of the ways that I did that was that I gave presentations to faculty members on, like we were doing Paulo Freire, we were looking at bell hooks, we were looking at some of the work of Dr. Bettina Love, who was here at UGA, abolitionist pedagogy. And so, believe it or not, a lot of my colleagues had never, ever heard of this stuff. And they're teaching at an institution that is primarily minority and Hispanic students. And so it was one way for me to be directly involved in impacting the education that the students that I care so deeply about are able to receive. And we've had great success for that. We even had the College of Science and Technology applied for and received a really prestigious Howard Hughes Medical Initiative HHMI grant over 3 years. I think it was like $3 million or some couple million, where they were able to diversify STEM. So they were able to say, like, we need more critical pedagogy, we need more direct interventions to have more diversification in the STEM program in the natural sciences. And it has been truly transformative. I mean, the faculty over there in the CST are like super engaged and really interested in, like, where can we find more scientists who look like our students and all of these different things. And we've had great success with programs like that. Also have community partnerships like the one I mentioned with Project Row Houses. Also served as a paid and unpaid consultant. So this is kind of where we get into people, need to know what we know as trained scholars who know how to look at things with this critical lens. And I was sharing that with the students that I had lunch with as well, because, there's no way to say how top-notch the education and the training in this program is. I truly just had no idea. And then I remember Lauren, Dr. Coleman, graduated 2 years before me, and she used to tell me, she would say all the time, girl, you're going to be so prepared. Don't you even worry. Like, once you get out here and you meet other PhDs and you see what's going on, like, you're going to be so grateful for all of these things that you experienced at Grady, all of these long nights, the times you were crying because you're so prepared. And I had no idea what she meant until I get into these rooms and these spaces with people, because I am very extremely prepared to engage in these kind of critical conversations that really propels things forward that they haven't had the opportunity to be as prepared for. And so that really, the paid and again, unpaid heavily, I will emphasize that. I don't want to sell any dreams here. Consulting opportunities are always there because folks need the perspective that we get in these classrooms, outside of the classrooms as well, and outside of academic journals, and that has been deeply rewarding. And then lastly, being active on local boards and commissions, this kind of civic engagement, which definitely was not on the 5-year, 10-year plan. In fact, I actually got tapped to join the Harris County Women's Commission after someone from Precinct 1 came to my porch talk at Project Row Houses, which was so interesting to me. I'm up there giving a talk with all these community members in the heart of 3rd Ward, and I remember saying when I opened my opening remarks was, this is probably the most important lecture that I'm ever going to give, and it's not even in the classroom, because it was literally people from the community walking by and stopping for this porch talk on this critical race theory house. And then from there, someone saw, I was like, we think you'd be great to come help us at Harris County advise the commissioner's court. And I was like, okay, I think so. They kind of got me because I wasn't reading too closely, which is another thing that academics do, but I know she was like, women's issues, health, economic empowerment. I was like, yeah, I like all those things. Sign me up. Next thing I know, I was like getting sworn in. I was like, what happened? I had to like do all this political paperwork, background check, and I was like, wait, what did I sign up for? And she said, I'll send you the bylaws. And I was like, oh, we're really into something. So I do want to say, although I'm passionate about my work, I love the things that I do, there are some disadvantages. There are some disadvantages, right? There's a resistance to your work. You experience this in public and professional settings. There's just no way around it. I think you all know. But there are no signs of this slowing down. My close colleague just last month received a hate voicemail after doing a news appearance. I fortunately never set up my voicemail, so I don't know if I've ever received them or not. But after I heard his, I was like, I'm never checking mine again. So if you look me up, don't call my office number because I'm not checking the voicemail. But you receive this kind of public, and then there's also this like professional, with your own colleagues. I mean, I am in Texas, so you're doing this work and you might experience resistance like in faculty senate or with people like not really wanting you to chirp up in faculty meetings and maybe saying, oh, she's so aggressive and intimidating and she's a bully in faculty meetings, and then it becomes an HR issue. And then, these kind of things happen. They're part of the reality when you are advocating for something with a clear goal and you are passionate about it. You have heightened visibility, which is a risk. I would love nothing more than to do my work without a spotlight, but it just kind of doesn't work like that. It just really doesn't, because you end up, folks, if you're bringing something that a lot of folks are not bringing, you just get elevated in this really interesting way. And you end up on a porch giving a talk, and the next thing you know, you're with the commissioner's court, and people are taking your pictures, and folks know that that's that girl who does that work over there, that critical race theory stuff, and she's an activist, and we're looking for someone to be mad at. Who do you think it is, So you get put on things like, I don't know if you all know about like the professor watch list and things that have happened where conservatives are like, this liberal education is indoctrinating and we're gonna like put heightened visibility on all of the professors and put their name on a website. You get hate mail, you get scrutiny. These things kind of come with the job. There's an impact on your scholarly productivity. This is kind of like just the reality, right? If you're doing all of this unpaid labor, if you're at these community meetings, if you are helping support Black and Brown students through Men of Legacy and Latinas Achieve, it doesn't leave a lot of time to be going through the processes of the peer review with the Journal of Communication. It just is difficult. It is a challenge. And I put scholarly productivity in quotes because I mean like things that you saw on my CV, right? Or what people deem, like I'm very productive, don't get me wrong, but in terms of published, peer-reviewed scholarship in a referee journal, that is impacted. So I just want to be clear, I meant to be facetious with that. There is an increase in unpaid labor. It's just the reality. I don't know how many of you all like to work for free, but I can't tell you how often it happens. It's just a part of the job. You give your working on social media, being a public intellectual is real work. It's not play work. It takes strategy, it takes editing, it takes content creation, whatever that word means to you these days. So it is a lot in unpaid labor, and you kind of can feel like, man, nobody's really like, I'm doing all this work, and what's happening, what's changing if you're not directly measuring every single thing you do. There are limits in academic job opportunities. That's the reality, probably related to that scholarly productivity, right? But that is a reality. I told some of my friends I was coming to UGA to give a talk, and they were like, oh, you're not gonna leave us and go work at UGA? I was like, I don't think so. It's not that, it's a far shot. I don't think so. Because I'm very aware that my choice to go to UHD and my choice to spend my time with the community and not do the publications and not be at the conferences 2 or 3 times a year limits where I can go as a scholar in the academy, right? It's probably the only place I can be on the board. I can do all these other things. But if I want to just up and go to, who knows, R1 University, where they're going to look at my CV and they're like, this is all great that people know you and love you and you're passionate about this stuff. But they're going to be asking, what have I done in a very different way, right? So you have that. That's a real reality. And then there's just plain burnout, which I think all of these things kind of lead to burnout. Passionate about something, people, public scrutiny, you're getting hate mail, you're not getting paid for the media spot that gave you hate mail. Like, all of these things are happening at the same time. You're experiencing resistance in the workplace. You're experiencing resistance in the community. You have politicians who are like actively trying to be aggressive against you. You kind of end up back on the couch crying, which is how we got here in the first place. But there are some, and I want to end here with the real advantages. Like, you have personal satisfaction is at the top of the list. No regrets, right? Super personal satisfaction in terms of being able to impact my community. There's nothing in this world like the moment when you see a student connect a dot or come back to you with an update or something. It's just like, thank you for sharing that with me. Like, it is just so immensely rewarding. Working with Project Row Houses after our round on critical race theory, they got a grant like a month later, and they asked us to like give a statement or whatever, and they got some like local social impact grant. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, because you get to stay in the 3rd Ward, which is rapidly gentrifying, and keep doing all of the great social impact initiatives that you're doing for another 20 years. There's a sense of belonging that comes with it. Like, there's nothing like being with my people and for my people, and walking into a place and knowing like, we're in this together. Like, we are in this together. I'm not doing this alone. Community and coalition building, civic opportunities, if that's your thing. I'm still figuring out if it's mine, but it is rewarding. I've met with the Harris County Women's Commission like 2 or 3 times by now, and we were able to pick our agenda for the year, which is going to be family infrastructures, which is super important in a post-Roe v. Wade type of world, and everything that's going on with Texas, to have like the backing of the local and county government behind us to say, okay, Texas, like, you want to get in women's business, let's really see what y'all are doing to support families of all different types, and let's really kind of like directly intervene now. And so that work allows us to really intervene on a county level and a city level. We can have them pull reports, we can have them show us data, we can make recommendations to the county commissioner to approve something or deny something. So I don't know, it might get to my head. I'm still figuring it out, but it feels good to be able to say, okay, we're in a post-Roe v. Wade world. What do I do? And now there is a thing that aligns with that. I had on here timeliness, because there's a thing that aligns with that now. And I think that's very different than what you experience with the personal satisfaction as a published scholar, which I had a chapter take 5 years, y'all, to get published. And I was like, what is going? And there was the one on teaching race and ethnicity in an intergenerational, intercultural classroom. And it came out in 2021. I had been working on it since before Trump was elected. We went through so many different revisions because of the political climate. So that's what happened. The press, which was SUNY press, wanted us to keep changing in it because things were like so volatile. So they were like, take this. Oh no, add that in. Oh, take this out. Oh, he's getting impeached. So it was all this stuff. And then when we needed it the most, which I felt was in 2020, we were at the final stages. I was like, we have the book. We have the text that everyone needs right now. And it cannot come out till next year. Right? That is a frustration that I think is unique to scholars who go through the peer review process, because you're like, I've been talking about this, I've been thinking about this for 6 years now, oh my gosh, it's my time. And the journal says, next year, volume 3, it will be all about you, right? And it's no longer relevant. So Schoolactivist work allows you to really say, okay, this is my time, and I'm out here right now. And that is also deeply satisfying. And then again, public recognition, if that's your thing, you can get, all kind of accolades and stuff. But I did want to end in a highlight after all of these lowlights, and just let you know I'm deeply, happy to be here. I'm very grateful for the foundation that I received with my master's and my PhD work. I had no idea this is a journey that I was going to go on, but it happened that way, and I was prepared for it. And so I'm very grateful for how my PhD journey turned out, even if it doesn't look like how I thought it was going. and even if we no longer use hashtags. So that's all I have. We can talk. It says we can all be schoolactivists, but I want you to know this is not indoctrination. I'll be putting that on all my presentations moving forward. Just in case anyone wants to know, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do because the work will continue anyway. So that's all I have.
Felicia, thank you. Thanks so much for that. We're recording, so to get questions, audio and stuff, I'm just going to walk around with this, but who's got a question? Question or a comment? Don't be bashful. We're all friends.
So you alluded to something with the lieutenant governor, and you just kind of threw it out there. I would like to hear more about that.
Oh, he's such a fun character. So Dan Patrick, fun fact, the graphic design that we did in Project Row Houses, we had all these key characters illustrated, and it was so much fun. But he is our lieutenant governor, and he is the one who sets the agenda for legislation or something like that. I can't get all the politics correct, but he is definitely the one who started the CRT ban in Texas, and he's trying to direct the CRT ban. He did that, and then of course you have your House and state senators introduce the bills and all that. But he's like, this is what I want the agenda to be, and then they just pick up the torch. And now he's interested in tenure. Eliminating tenure, and so that's kind of his latest torch that he's passed, and they're in a session right now where our provost has sent a memo and said, everybody just calm down, just wait and see what happens. Because the idea is that they're going to kind of do something to try to eliminate tenure. We currently have had a mandate for all tenure faculty to do a post-tenure review, which is something that has received a lot of pushback and feedback, and it's been really spicy. So that's kind of the role that he plays. Lots of fun things.
Hi, my name is Keishandra.
Hi.
I had a question about, I seen the stuff with the health and medical journalism. I wanted to ask, how did you get started in that? I didn't know health and medical journalism was a thing until I got to UGA. So I wanted to know.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I wanted to know how you got interested in it. Was it just UGA or other factors?
No, it was Pat.
Okay, same.
It was Pat Thomas. So, this is part of what it means to have a really great stellar faculty, right? And that's why I love my role as a faculty member, because you do have people who pull things out of students and push students toward things that they would have never imagined. And I met her, and I knew she was an award-winning journalist and super great. And she had these classes, and if you've ever met her, she's super tough. And I was like, if I have to take any journalism class, I'm going to take it with her, and it just so happened to be in the health and medical journalism program. And so that's how we got started. And of course, like I said, that master's program was such an eye-opening program in a number of ways. So, I was learning about a lot of things that I became deeply passionate about.
And you got thrown out of a clinic.
Oh, I did get
And
thrown out
Dr.
of the
Felicia
clinic.
Harris was once 86th from a health clinic in Monroe, Georgia, as I recall.
Yeah, we were talking about the Obamacare got me in trouble back. It feels so old. Yeah, that Obamacare was really controversial back in its day.
Thank you, Felicia. We are so proud of you and that you're one of our alumni. I just wanted to say that was fantastic.
you.
So I don't think R1 universities can sit by any longer in the climate that we have now and just let scholastivists who are at teaching institutions do the heavy work for us. What would your advice be to a place like the University of Georgia to amp up the kind of things that you're doing here?
Ooh, that's a tough one. And I say it's a tough one because that is not a pathway that I've even engaged And that is just the reality. I've partnered with University of Houston, I know on the flyer it says I'm at University of Houston. I'm at Houston Downtown, which is an institution within the UH system. But UH is the R1 powerhouse of the UH system. And then UHD is the second largest institution within the system, serving the bulk of Houstonians and this non-traditional student population. So I've partnered with UH, and it's always been interesting. And I have good friends and colleagues who are there who are dealing with some really hard structural and systemic barriers. But I think one of the things is always like put the resources where the ask is that, you just have to be able to put resources behind people who want to explore certain things. I tell that to everyone. If scholars want to go to a conference that's not AEJ, for example, I know at my institution still we have an approved list of conferences where it's like you can go to this one, or this one, but you try that and absolutely not, you're on your own, right? So that kind of limits the range of discovery if we can't even go out into these places where we need it. I know course releases is probably not a time here, but that's one of the things where we got a grant because we needed more money to buy our time to be able to go out and do the things that we were passionate about doing to reap some real results. And I think always recruitment, retention, diversifying is just the number one key, which it's been a very diverse experience since I've been here, I will say. On this trip, I can definitely see a little bit more than what it was when I was here almost a decade ago. And it's been a pleasant surprise because I wasn't expecting that. Honestly, my mom was like, "You're wearing this outfit today?" And I was like, I'm so intentional about my outfit, you have no idea. And I have an article to share if anyone would ask me about it. I was so prepared because I was like, we need to disrupt the academy. This is me being, I look like a professor, even though hashtags are defunct. I'm so ready for someone to ask me so I can say, yes, I have my PhD, and we need more people to show up doing the things that they do in the way that they want to do them in order to push against the dominant perception of what it means to be a scholar in the academy. I do have that literature. I can send it to you. So I think just kind of creating the space for people to follow those pathways is what an R1 needs to do, because we don't see a lot of that in R1. At least I don't see a lot of that in R1 spaces. You see a lot of the same. It's just a lot of the same publisher apparel type of stuff. I don't want to bash too hard, but yeah.
Got one last comment.
Yes, so mine is a comment. And first I wanted to just tell you, thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And I think, so you all would talk about health inequities. And this week in my diversity course, we are talking about racism in health journalism. And so we're talking about that. So I think that's very important to introduce some of our undergrad students to that very early, as well as encourage some of our grad students. But I also wanted to just say, I appreciate your journey and you sharing it and being so open about sharing that with us. I think so many times students, whether they're undergrad or graduate students, they learn about R1 and they want to, they believe that is the only path to go. And I think it's very important for students to see that there are other journeys and pathways to, and I know yours was not all smooth, right? And every hurdle you didn't just jump over in one try, but I think it's very important for people to hear that, to be impassioned in their experiences. So I have a friend right now that I tell her all the time, she's getting her PhD and she's back in industry. And I tell her all the time, that is a great thing. And I think, hearing about that, especially when you're talking about race and racism and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
What I'll add to that is all of my friends, when I came out, I met a cohort of Black women at AEJMC. The ones who went to R1s, none of them have tenure yet. None of them have tenure. They have switched, almost every single Black woman that I know has switched institutions at least one time, restarted the clock, all of these things. And so that goes up against my Black feminist thought ethic, right? Because I'm like, what we not finna do is be moving every 3 years and bringing my son all over the world, restarting over and over again, going to another institution and you telling me that the last 5 years of my work doesn't matter, right? Or it cannot count, whatever you needed to count for. So I don't know, maybe Dr. Hume, those are some of the things you can think about, because that is a real reality. And once I saw that trajectory, even though I have thought about like leaving UHG a time or two, I was like, no, I'm gonna stay put. Because in the academy in general, whether it's R1, comprehensive, teaching institution, Black women are less than 2% of the professoriate. And that is the reality, that this is a space that wasn't necessarily designed to embrace us or to hold us. And so we're up against that all the time, all the way in all spaces. So thank you for that. I looked you up because I looked you up too before I got here. So yes, thank you for that.
Felicia, thanks. I want to give her one more hand.